Good morning. My name is Gábor Halász. I am the head of the Doctoral School of Education of ELTE University, and I would like to welcome all of you at the EDiTE-NAFOL Conference on Doctoral Education and Teacher Education in a European perspective. I would like to express a special welcome to our leaders who will in a few minutes welcome you. Professor Zsolt Demetovic, who is the Dean of our faculty, Kari Smith, who is the leader of NAFOL, and Mihail Schratz, who is the leader of the EDiTE Consortium. I also would like to express a special welcome to our first two keynote speakers, Hannah Grainger Clemson from the DG Education, Culture and Sports of the European Commission, and Valéria Csépe, Professor Valéria Csépe, who is the chair of the Hungarian Higher Education Accreditation Committee. I also would like to introduce those two persons you can address with any technical questions, Judith and Kinga. So they have the green badge with some other people, so if you have any problem you can turn to them. My assumption is that you got all the technical information with the registration, including the programs. There is just one thing I would like to add, and this is that we have some goals of this conference. As I do not have the time to elaborate on that, I prepared the slide. So I am asking you to look at the goals and let us keep them in mind while we are working together during these 2 days. So now I am asking our leaders to say a few welcoming words. Zsolt, if I could ask you.
Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome you very much at this EDiTE-NAFOL conference at the Eötvös Loránd University Faculty of Education and Psychology. We are very proud of being host of this conference, and we also try to hope that it was a good selection to organize this conference here, and we will try to give all the possibilities to organize a very fruitful meeting. We think that it's a good place to have such a conference at the Eötvös Loránd University and at our faculty, as this is an issue, the teacher education, doctoral studies, it's all issues which we take very seriously and which we think is a core component of education in Hungary and worldwide. Also, our faculty has a leading role in Hungary in teacher education, and also our doctoral school of education, which has a history of 25 years now, has a leading role in teaching doctoral students, and among those, also those students whose topic whose very focused interest is on teacher education. So this meeting is very important for us, very important for the university, for the faculty, for the doctoral school, and for the Institute of Education and also the other institutes of this faculty. So I would like to welcome you very much. I would like to welcome all the doctoral students who came here and who will participate at the conference, both from the part of the EDiTE and from the part of the NAFOL. I would like to welcome all the supervisors and teachers who are also here, and also all the other participants, other doctoral students, other professors and colleagues who attend this conference. I would like to say thank both to the EDiTE Consortium and especially to Michael Schratz, who is the leader of this consortium. And I would like to say thank you also to Corey Smith from the part of the NAFOL, and I think that it's a very nice idea, and I hope it's going to be very fruitful that these two organizations or corporations, they provide or organize this conference together. And also I would like to say thank you also to the keynote speakers, Professor Valéria Csépe, member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and I think it's going to be a very interesting keynote talk, especially if we take consideration that Professor Csépe is not only leading internationally leading professor and scientist of cognitive neuroscience, but also head of the Hungarian Accreditation Committee, and also working on the reform as being responsible for the reform of the national curriculum. So meeting of all these areas, I think, gives a special interest to her talk. And also I would like to welcome very much Hannah Grainger Clemson, the other keynote speaker of the day from the European Commission, the DG Education, Youth, Sports and Culture. So I think this conference will have a very, very interesting start. And looking at the program, I'm sure that it's going to be even more excited in the next 2 days. So I would like to wish a very nice and very fruitful conference for you, and thanks again to all of you for coming here, and welcome at the Faculty of Education and Psychology at the Eötvös Loránd University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zsolt, for these welcoming words. And now I'm asking Kari to say a few words to you, Kari, who perhaps I can say is the mother of the idea of having this conference. Kari.
Thank you. And hi, everybody. And I'm so pleased to see that finally we have done it. An idea, I just thought of this morning. When you have an idea and you see that this idea comes true, it's a very, very pleasant feeling. So thank you for listening, for taking up on the idea, and for taking over and making it real in such a wonderful way as it looks so far. I'm lucky because I have a connection to both NAFOL as the head and to EDiTE, where I'm a member of the Scientific Advisory Board, together with Katie and together with Pavel. So we have been fortunate to follow EDiTE from the very beginning. Just to say a few words about NAFOL. NAFOL, and before that maybe, we are all, both NAFOL and EDiTE, we can certainly support these goals because that is what we are aiming for. And NAFOL was established in 2010, where we had our first cohort. And the first head of NAFOL, Professor Anna-Lena Östern, she is here with us, and I'm very happy she could join us here for this meeting. We have graduated about 100 PhD students, And currently we have about 130 PhD students in the program. And they come from teacher education institutions all over Norway, from the very, very north to the very, very south. We're also happy to say that during the NAFOL period, which is 4 years, some of our students have already graduated with success, Natalia, and others have handed in their PhDs. So it seems to be working one way or the other. Now we are working together with EDiTE. We are going to learn from each other, and I think we have a lot to learn. It really doesn't matter if we come from this country or that country, if we come from this university or that university. The more time we spend together, the more we talk together, the more we can learn from each other. So I will just conclude by saying a very warm thank you to Michael from EDiTE and from the other people in EDiTE who were ready to pick up the idea which we had at the meeting. I'd like to thank the Dean of this faculty, to Gabor, and to EDiTE for making it all possible in such a wonderful way. I would also take the opportunity to thank Anna Synnøve and Kristin, who has been involved in the organization from the very beginning from the NAFOL side. It is truly a European cooperation. Let us have fun, let us learn together, and let us enjoy this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kari. I think it's very important that you mentioned the other members of the scientific board. This is a very important body for us. And if Kari is the mother of the idea of this conference, then I could say that Michael is the father of the whole EDiTE concept. So I am asking Michael to say a few welcoming words.
Thank you, Gabor, and welcome, and thank you, Jolt. You gave some idea of what it means to have a particular event coming on here. This is the emerging future where it starts, and it starts here and now. And thank you, Kari, for bringing in the ideas which keep running and running all the way through, and I've seen them ending up at so many different places and now emerging in this conference, which is great. And why we are here for, well, the first question is, who are you? I hope we will have the chance to find out who we are, not just existentially, but I mean professionally, being here. And if we are not aware of who we are, then it's very difficult to fulfill all these tasks. And secondly, what is our purpose in the future in all this? And Gabor, thanks for bringing in the goals of EDiTE again, because we have the chance now with mixing the two different communities of NAFOL and EDiTE to enlarge the cooperation in doctoral education for improving teacher education. So we've got the first goal with just the people present here to make the most of it. So please try to mingle and get together as much as possible, as you did just an hour ago when you met here and got together. The second goal, better understanding the emerging European context of teacher education, I think that is crucial. Being in a phase of Europe, it's the teachers of the future who make the future Europe. And of course beyond Europe, because we have people here, but this is at least the framework of the EDiTE project. And I think learning how difficult it is when we go to a different place, how the structures don't fit, and experiencing this is life and not the exception. So we have to deal with disruptive experiences nowadays, and learning that, I think this conference offers a marvelous community to do that. So try and learn from each other. The third one, better understanding the role of doctoral education, improving teacher education, is really knowing what it means that you are part of this community, because the socialization into teacher education, into academia, forms your future steps you do unconsciously. And I hope we can make use of this conference to put things from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, because that's the first step of learning, to become aware of what it means to get into academia, moving into it by being a discussant, by being a chair, by being a critical friend, because this is the initiation into academic life. And since you've experienced what it's like in different institutions, try to reflect on that, because it has a corporate impact without you knowing, because it does something to you. And sometimes it, as I noticed very often, it was painful, but learning is not always fun, and you have to make the most of that. And finally, supporting our doctoral students. I mean, this is something we as the supervisors and co-supervisors are asked to do. And when I was talking to you at breakfast, you know, learning, the longest distance in the world is what you are thinking about, what is in your mind, getting it down to a blank piece of paper. And just to bridging this gap, I think we have lots of opportunities, and we'll hopefully fill them in a productive way. And Kari thanked the organizers and all the people. So I want to thank you all for going into this program, taking the efforts, and I know how hard it is to finish things off, and I hope this conference will help in shortening the distance between the end and now. It's the first day of the rest of our project.
Thank you, Michael. And now we are ready to start the substantial part of our conference. So I ask Hannah to help us to understand better the emerging European context of teacher education.
It's okay, we're in. Wow, how to follow that. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. It's already been amazing. I've really enjoyed the introductory welcome talks and to see those conference goals as well. Gabor frightened me a little last night. I arrived at the hotel. He said, "Oh, Hannah, I'm so pleased. You've just been discussing our conference goals, and one of them is to better understand the European context for teacher education, and I'm so glad you're going to tell us everything." Okay, Gabor, nice to see you too. And maybe this is also how we're all feeling a little bit. So pleased, says your supervisor, to read what you've just been working on for the past few weeks, months, years. You're going to tell me everything to answer that research question. But actually, I think we can all agree we're all here to talk together, and hopefully together we will have a better understanding and a better idea of the way forward. And that's the point I want to make right at the beginning. In this picture, if you take this as the European approach, I cannot tell you every leaf. I cannot tell you about every insect. I cannot tell you about every little drop of water. Because who knows, apart from the teachers themselves, what is really going on, what the needs are for teacher education. Who is closest to that? It is quite possibly you. In fact, you might say, it is definitely me. I really know what's going on. And part of that journey is to better understand it, but also to be better heard once you have that understanding. So I think all I can do in the short time that I have, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, is to say something about the landscape. I can say a little bit about the structures that we have in place across Europe to try and support teacher education, to try and better understand what's going on. I can talk a little bit about the flow of information and how we come to those understandings. And I can also talk about journeys. So I thought I could start off with my journey. Yes, that's me. Age 3, it was a long time ago, as you can possibly tell by the poor quality of the photograph and the haircut. Thanks, Mother. It's me on the right with my baby brother as he was. He's a lot bigger now. And I went from school and I went somewhere else, and I went to university for the first time, and I did some other things. And then somehow I ended up as a teacher. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I can say for sure when I was at school, I didn't even know I wanted to be a teacher. And I didn't know how much I would love it. And I certainly didn't know that once I'd been a teacher and once I'd been head of subject, that suddenly I would end up doing a doctorate myself in education. I thought I wanted to be a dancer or a football player. I couldn't quite decide. But there I was doing this doctorate. And so I remember that journey particularly, or that part of my journey. And then from that, I went on to another university, and there I was being a tutorer, a lecturer to student teachers, me. And then I was involved in supporting early career researchers. And then from there, I somehow ended up at the European Commission. My point is that maybe when you look back, you understand all the connections. And also, I'm going to make a little confession, along with not knowing everything. I wasn't first choice to come here either. But it's okay. I'm very glad to be here. I am glad to be here because of my journey, because I'm so excited to learn from you. But also, the point is, when I'm thinking about my journey, about teaching, about being a student myself, about being a doctoral researcher, about supporting early career researchers, about working in the European Commission with policymakers, in that there are some really interesting parallels, and that's part of what I want to share with you. So part of this landscape, what is this landscape? You know a lot already. You've read a lot already. These kinds of statements are quite typical, I would say, of the European Commission. We have a vision. A Europe in which learning, studying, and doing research would not be hampered by borders. A continent in which people have a strong sense of Europe's cultural heritage and its diversity. And I think even in the dance and the cultural moment just there, we get a sense of that. But I'm thinking more about that first sentence. To you, does that first phrase, does that help you come to an understanding of what the European context is, about what a European teacher is? And I know, Mikhail, you wrote the paper that started this process off about thinking what this European teacher could be or should be. Does that help? What would you add to this if we were to make a statement about European teachers? Could you improve this vision? I think so, and that's why I'm also glad to be here. We talk a lot about quality, but we also have to do a lot of soul searching about what quality means. Who is it for? We always at the heart of all of our work are really thinking about the final outcome, which is really having an impact for all learners. And that's what the European education area is about. Yes, it is. It's about teachers. It's about the people that support the learners. It's about the wider communities around that, the possibilities for learners. But also what I'm going to talk about a little bit is about how the learners are not just the young people. We talk about modernizing school education, and that's an interesting one. What does modernizing mean? What do we mean by innovation? Where do we want to go? How much can we think out of the box and explore new possibilities? And then there are things such as the Digital Education Action Plan and the key competencies for lifelong learning that are going to be having quite a significant impact on teacher education and what we expect of teachers, or rather this super teacher, to also use one of Mikhail's phrases. I'm really pleased, though, that education, I can say for sure, is gaining more and more attention in the European context. It's, of course, there are concerns about security, about climate change, about all of these big issues. Education, to be honest, has been left a little bit aside, but now really politicians are seeing just how crucial and how at the core of societal change education is. And that's why you have such things as doubling the Erasmus Plus budget, and we can actually see these possibilities. So we have things such as the Communication on School Development and Excellent Teaching, which came out last year. And again, you may have come across this. If you haven't, it's fine. It's there on the internet. I'm not going to tell you everything that's in it, but I can give you the three main ideas. That it's about developing better and more inclusive schools. And this is the one that's, of course, exciting for us. Supporting teachers and school leaders for excellent teaching and learning. But also being mindful of the need to work on the governance of school education systems to be more effective, equitable, and efficient. But that really is, if we're going to achieve the first two, the third one is what we are very much concerned about, is that we can no longer treat teachers in the classroom and teacher education or initial teacher education as separate things. We cannot think about the way in which we engage with parents as separate to the way in which we manage schools. These things are all interlinked. We cannot think about the big things about curriculum development, about funding, if we also do not think about the little things such as being mindful of the well-being of students in school. All of these things are interlinked. And this is not just what one of my managers would say is political blah blah. We actually, these are big statements, but they also have a sort of a realization in not just in documents, but we are seeing this in terms of policy change. But I wanted just to share with you now the kinds of conceptual understanding that where we are at in terms of the way in which we are thinking. The two main ways in which we want to think about teacher education at the moment is really thinking about developing an attractive profession. And that's not just about bringing in teachers naively. That's about actually having a proper offer of support, professional support, continuous development, but also empowering teachers, saying, yes, you are the ones who are there knowing what's going on, but also you are the ones who are capable of innovating and changing the schools in which you work. And also the thing that I wanted to share with you also is this phrase at the bottom here, based on sound pedagogical research. And of course, this is where you come in. It's where researchers to us are so important on providing that evidence and offering those ideas and recommendations and opportunities and working with teachers and school leaders in their context. So we have all these different ideas. You can read. My colleague asked me to wave these around quite vigorously. There's a lot of reading. But I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that to you, and I have a copy of each, which I can leave with you. But the things that that within these documents are developed pieces of research, things that we're bringing research together to come up with these ideas that we can say absolutely for sure that policymakers are taking note of, and that's what I'm going to explain in a moment. With talking about the working group. So I'm a member of, or I'm the coordinator of the ET 2020 Working Group on Schools. That is a group that meets every 3 months. They are representatives from ministries of education all across Europe, plus representatives of European organisations that you will recognise, such as the Association of Teacher Education in Europe, Steiner Waldorf, the trade union associations, lots of different stakeholders, the Parents Association, Students Association. And what we talk about, we come together and we base our discussions on research. So these are papers that have been produced, published research, also informal research, and their experiences of policy change in their own countries. And we discuss how these could come together, what we share in terms of European ideas, but they are also helping each other to make changes. They are putting together this case. They're saying, we tried this in this country, and it worked in this way, it didn't work in this way. Do you have suggestions? And this peer learning has been really, really important for the development of our European ideas. It's very difficult for me to stand here and explain. So what I'm going to do is show you a short video, and hopefully this will work. It may take a while to load. We'll see how we get on. It's just a 5-minute video which will show you the process in which we... You might need to switch the screen just quickly. He's on it. While we're switching the screens, I can tell you then a bit more about this working group. This is the bit where I'm explaining more about the structures that we have in place. We've just had a conference where we published the 2 years' worth of work, and I would also encourage you to have a look at this. This is another classic case of, well, you know how this feels. You spend a lot of time writing and writing and writing and bringing together your ideas, and you hope that somebody is going to read it. I'm not sure how many people have read my PhD, although I did get an email the other day saying that somebody had quoted it in some of their work, so I was quite pleased with that. You've got that to look forward to. This is the report, and in particular, I would encourage you to look at the teachers and school leaders section, because it has about 60 examples of recent policy development, so it's very much of the moment, and it's got the ideas that you'll hear about in the video. So, let's give it another go.
Education systems have many differences, but also share many challenges. Ministers are acutely aware of the need to support contemporary approaches to teaching and learning and help schools to respond to the changing educational demands of learners and society. Supported by the European Commission, the Schools Working Group, representatives from ministries and European stakeholder organisations, meet every 3 months in Brussels, as well as at peer learning events in European countries, to discuss current issues and support each other in a critical reflection of their own systems.
For me, it's possible to take these things back to my own country, to be inspired and to see, okay, what different perspectives can we use within our context. I share these elements with colleagues in conferences, etc. And the other added value is that it's this shared understanding of a complex problem. So we get a clearer conceptual understanding. So what are the elements which really are important to address in this topic? And I think that's really neat to be part of this group, to have that exchange.
In 2016, they began a 2-year focus on the governance of school education systems and how to develop policy action that promotes higher quality school education through sustainable innovation and inclusion.
Our work was focused in key areas for the governance of the schools. And for each of them, we was able to identify and define some principles for policy development based on recent research, and 2, on our own experience, the country experience on these areas. We have the opportunity to share them with ourselves in the working group, and thinking and critically think about how they was put in practice and with what kind of results in different contexts. And that was very interesting, because this gives us ideas about what can we do in our own countries.
The working group understands that improving the experiences and outcomes of all learners should be the central pursuit of school education policies. It is necessary to examine what is needed at school level and then how the conditions can be created at policy level. Not only this, but promoting and supporting schools as learning organisations is vital in order to have schools that have the capacity to develop themselves and ensure that high-quality education is available for all.
We promote the idea of school as a learning organisation, firstly because it enables teachers and school leaders to develop their pedagogical understanding and their organisational skills, and it also allows them to engage in collaboration with one another and with research and networking. One of the key purposes of the school as a learning organisation is being able to draw on a much wider range of expertise And so it's important that it's not only drawing from teachers within the school, but teachers in the wider community and also stakeholder organisations. Policy action needs to support teachers and school leaders in developing a clear vision and a clear understanding of what that vision means for them in the day-to-day life of schools.
The group also promotes the idea of school education as a learning system. This is based on horizontal connections, such as between a school and the wider community. There are also vertical connections, such as between a school and regional authorities. Strengthening and making the best use of these connections helps to organise collective knowledge as a way of better understanding what is happening in different parts of the system.
We do have a national level, we do have a regional level, and then we do have a local level, and school is part of the local level, and they all have their own important roles in the system. It is very important that these three levels interact with each other. We are used to having national level to tell what to do to the local level, but now we understand that there needs to be a role also on the local level. So we need more evidence-informed action, and we need motivation and engagement, and then we need sustainability to make those changes to last.
All of the research, ideas and country examples are available online, and the working group encourages anyone working in school education to take advantage of this opportunity to learn from the most recent developments in this field.
For me, the added value is that I can bring that back to my own country, to be inspired to see, okay, what can we use within our own country to share that with colleagues in my country.
So it is those messages are coming directly from the Ministries of Education, where they recognise just how important research is, that they recognise just how important learning is between different parts of the system. Right from the very beginning, they were saying it's very, very important to encourage policymakers, ministries to listen to research, to listen to the voices of teachers, and to find ways of having all of those voices represented in discussions. You may be there sitting, well, I'm not sure that the government really is going to listen to us, but we have to have, I really feel that we are moving forward in that we are encouraging a change of attitude, and that all of the countries across Europe are really working to actually try and find ways to improve that. I'm going to move on quickly because I know I only have about 5 more minutes. But I just wanted to particularly share with you this idea, which is the school as a learning organisation. This is going to come up quite frequently, time and time again, in the next at least 2 years, in terms of the way in which we at European level are talking about schools. That it's about trying to give schools more autonomy, teachers more autonomy, encouraging them to reflect on their own practice. Of course, that has to go hand in hand with being given more of that responsibility and freedom to make the changes as suits their own context. But this is really a very key idea that we're working with at the moment. And of course, you can look at that in more detail through the reports. As I said, I mentioned this one in particular about teachers and school leaders. This is quite a terrifying diagram. I'm going to skip over this one, but it's again making the point about how the different parts of the system, policy-making decision level and regional school and teacher level are all interconnected, and where we need in the next few years to be really working on making improvements, which of course research can add to. I will share these slides with you so you'll be able to look at these again if you wish. So this is the way in which we put our super teachers under the microscope. We connect with networks, we have studies, we run projects, we produce reports ourselves working with researchers, we invite experts, and of course we have working groups in Brussels. Those are some examples there of those. So what do we actually also do? What is our support directly to these teachers? And this is this bottom level here is really what I wanted to talk about. We do work a lot with ministries. and we engage with researchers, but we also do have a direct offer to teacher education. That involves the support that we can give through Erasmus+. We support teachers gaining practical experience, mobility, school partnership projects, and we also have, we're also part of our journey, part of our learning is how better to support teachers through online tools. I'm not sure if any of you have that as a particular area of interest, but it's something that we are definitely exploring, not least because it means that we can reach more people than before. E-twinning, you possibly already know about. This is the way, it's an online community of teachers working in schools where they are offered professional development and can embark on projects together. This is hugely popular. As you can see, we have over 500,000 teachers registered in that. We also have the School Education Gateway, which is something that I work on, which has been an interesting learning experience for me, and something that I feel quite passionately is about, where essentially we have to practice what we preach, to use a phrase. If we are going to say things about teachers needing to be collaborative, about being mobile, about being able to engage with ideas from different countries, we need to do that ourselves, and that is this is one of the key ways in which we do it. We have this platform where we translate not just into different languages, but we translate what is going on across Europe directly for teachers and researchers. And that's not to say that it's necessarily making it oversimplified, but it's appreciating that these people have different interests, and also not to say too much about our policy documents, but they're not always fun to read. So we try and make them more engaging through this platform. There's more information here. I will share these slides with you so you can read about them. But what's really important for us through these platforms is that we are able to create communities. And I think that's what I was really interested in, what you were saying in the introduction about you are part of a community, you are part of a research community, you may be part of multiple research communities. We recognize that we are also trying to provide opportunities to build communities, and that is what we have found is so strong and can be so powerful in making advances in teaching practice, in pedagogical research, in teacher education, is the more we can bring together people to share expertise, the better, to open up ideas, to help people see things from different perspectives. But of course, recognizing that people will need to adapt things for their own context. So we have things such as news and expert articles and teaching resources and ways in which you can find out how to get Erasmus Plus funding for your projects. We also have this Teacher Academy where we've just started in the last 2 years offering online courses, recognizing that teachers say that CPD can be too expensive or they don't have time. So we're trying to find out how can we best make these offers for teachers, things that are cost effective, that can actually provide this framework for sharing. There are some examples there. So we have more MOOCs, these courses that are available to thousands of teachers at any one time. We've had a good success rate, so they've been rated very good or good. And I think this is also the last thing that I wanted to share, where I see a parallel in terms of coming together in terms of researchers, coming together in terms of policymakers, what is being European in education about, we're trying to do through these courses as well. You don't just take this course as an individual. You don't just register as a teacher, read some PDF documents, and then fill in a multiple choice questionnaire, and then you get a certificate. We encourage people to engage. We have different ways of doing that by doing using these interactive tools online. We are trying to get teachers to pose questions to each other, to share challenges. Even when they produce their learning diaries and lesson plans to be assessed, we thought, who is going to assess all of this? Of course, they're assessing each other. So in that way, in which you'll know as researchers, when you go through a peer review process for your published articles, we use the same idea with teachers. When they share their resources, they look at each other and they say, oh, that I can see the strengths there, but how about perhaps you could develop it in this way? And then they curate those resources in the same way in which academic journals work, and then they are published online. So that's just one little practical example of a parallel, because I think what underpins also that thinking is the teacher as an agent of change, as an action researcher. And I think that's also what you will know yourselves through your own journey and your own experience, and of course what needs to be embedded in teacher education for these European teachers. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to come back to draw us back out to our landscape. How far have I got? How far have we got in our thinking? How far have you got in your journey over the past few years? Where are we going? What are the next steps? We're definitely going to keep working on focusing on teachers, teacher careers, the teaching profession over the next 2 years with the working group. I can say that for sure. As I said, with the work on key competencies, with competence-based learning, there will be more focus on innovative pedagogies, on developing different ways, supporting innovation in schools and in the classroom, but I know and I can say for sure that there is also a call for evidence of that. So there is a focus on bringing in research. How about you for this week? Where are you on your journeys? Turn it round to you. How are you feeling? How are we feeling as these super teachers, these super researchers? It's the European policy officer. Some people say we have to make all these changes. We have to save the day. We have to transform Europe. It can be a bit of a burden, and hopefully you're feeling quite positive and already up for that challenge. But of course, with all superheroes, there's a bit of soul searching about our identity, who we are, and where we are going. And I can say from my perspective, my journey, I also feel when I write these things, I wonder if anybody's ever going to read them or listen. We hope so. We keep sharing, we keep talking, we keep asking questions, we keep listening. That's quite an old-fashioned fact. I no longer really pick up the phone, but we try and come out and engage. And often it does feel like you're on your own with your own ideas, but one thing I can certainly say is, and I hope you trust and understand through this short presentation, that in all of our work, we really do try and bring in as many research perspectives as possible in order to take ideas forward. And so I hope that you feel empowered, that you feel that your brilliant research will be listened to and embedded in practice in the future. And yes, be inspired, keep strong, keep flying high, and thank you and good luck.
Thank you, dear Hannah. I might have been frightening yesterday, but I can tell you that this is what we got is exactly what we expected. So thank you much for coming and for sharing with us. And I would like to confirm that these documents are worth being read. And now I am asking Vali to talk about the meaning of quality in doctoral education.
First of all, I would like to thank for inviting me here, and so being able to listen at least to the first presentation, so in the European context, because quality is evaluated in the European context as well. What the meaning of quality, and especially quality assurance in doctoral education, what is the highest level of higher education, actually the jewel of or the crown of higher education, and what kind of an impact doctoral schools and doctoral education can have on a very multidisciplinary field, and this is pedagogy, this is teaching. So actually teachers are who need the most multidisciplinary background for being able to teach, to innovate, and to go with the changes in a very fast-changing world, when the adaptation of schools became an even more important question than before. So what I like to speak about how is related the whole work of higher education, the higher education institutions, and the work of the Hungarian Higher Education Accreditation Committee. So they're having the whole task of quality assurance in higher education as a whole system. And how our work has changed, especially according to the European context and the general aspects and the doctoral schools. From this point of view, the doctoral schools in pedagogy, in any fields of education, is only somewhat different as compared to the other doctoral schools, what kind of tasks they do have and what kind of challenges they do face. So in Hungary, the Higher Education Accreditation Committee, this is just a summary of that, what we do deal with. In Hungary, actually, there are 66 higher education institutions, and in these higher education institutions do have a very different profile, and the number of newly enrolled students, for example, in 2017 and 18, actually, so the just finishing educational year, so the more than 70,000. And the number of enrolled PhD students, we have data from 2016, so the more than 2,400. So there are so many students having their training in more than 170 doctoral schools in Hungary. So that's actually quite a high number of doctoral schools, and it's a challenge from a point of view of quality assurance. So the Higher Education Accreditation Committee is always under external reviews, so the quality assurance of a quality assurance committee. So it's going on in different years. So the last visit of the ENCA, that's the European Society of Quality Assurance Agencies, so happened just at the beginning of May. So we aim at to a higher level, especially to belong to a register what is becoming the most important in Europe, and that's the ECAR. So the Hungarian higher education system looks like, and so I share this. These are official data, and so even OECD data, and it hasn't changed too much. So the different levels, so the years of education on the bachelor level, on master level, and the doctoral schools, and also the vocational training as well. But what has changed, for example, so in the last year, so the year of training in doctoral school changed to 2 + 2 years. and the doctoral schools had to, or some of them still have to adjust as to how they change their training programs, especially so the foundational years, the first 2 years, followed by an exam, and the extra 2 years. This is a particular challenge for the doctoral schools and the Hungarian Higher Education Accreditation Committee. So that's the organization chart, but here is something very important. So not only the disciplinary committees deal with the quality of the doctoral schools, but there is a standing committee on doctoral school and what is very much related, the professor applications in Hungary, what is actually not a traditional QA task at many quality assurance agency. So I inherited a rather traditional system what concerns quality assurance and accreditation in Hungary when I was appointed in 2016, September, and so now from March on, so that we have a board, and so the board is appointed for 6 years from the 1st of March. So we have now the possibility to continue with the changes we started with in European context. The first task was to have a particular strategy on something what is very important and existed on paper. This is the European standards and guidelines. 2015 signed by all the ministers of education in the European Union and hasn't been introduced for 2 years in Hungary, so we introduced it in 2017. The implementation took particular effort in the higher education accreditation committees to discuss it with the stakeholders. And there is now, so that we are going further with, and it seems to be that the new aspects of quality assurance are getting through the higher education institutions. So we have new methods in this accreditation. We have a renewed pool of reviewers as up to now. So the reviewers were basically those people who were working in the Hungarian higher education institutions. So now we have a new pool of reviewers from different countries. So there is an international reviewing process going on, especially as a start for the higher education institutions. So the wish, what is in all papers and in all documents about higher education in Hungary, this is the internationalization, is a very important task in quality assurance. And we have now a new committee who is working on the new criteria of quality assurance of the doctoral schools, so the doctoral schools accreditation methods. So I will speak about that a little bit. And we would like to introduce the doctoral schools accreditation in English language. Otherwise, we are not going to be on the international scene. And from this point of view, the European collaborations and doctoral schools, English language doctoral schools, not just doctoral schools having some courses in English, then applying for a certificate at the accreditation committee, but the whole process, the course structure, the programs, the core staff, and all the skills, competencies, and especially the learning outcome, and with a special focus on the students, is the new approach. What we did immediately after introducing the ESG in 2017, the ESG 2015, so they broadened the concept of quality. So that's quality, it's not just about the excellence of staff, the excellence of professors, the school books, etc. It's not just quality. So in the focus of the quality are the students. So their studies, their support, their learning outcomes, even their chances on the labor market. So after getting their doctoral degree, the PhD. So this is the only scientific degree. So we have in Hungary the habilitation, as the Germans have. It's just a scientific title. And we have the Doctor of Sciences. It's also a title and not a degree. So they're given by the Hungarian Academy of Sciences for very high scientific achievement. So we had to broaden the concept according to the European standards and guidelines, what concerns the progress of students, the support of students, social inclusion, so all the issues what are very important, and it was very, very new for the higher education institutes, at least for the majority of higher education institutes. They went through this new accreditation process. And there is a different approach to how we look at the quality in holistic way, so to include the student life cycle, the governance and the managerial aspects, and these are highly, highly important in a doctoral school, how students in the doctoral school do feel that they are a part of a whole process. How do you want to have inventive teachers in teacher education having their PhD degree when they do not have all the support on the way of invention, creativity, if you wish. I'm a psychologist by degree, so the creativity is a delicate issue. The overarching educational objectives align with student competencies, and it's a part of the quality assurance on the institutional level. And in the institutional level, so there are everything belonging to. What we are doing is from the initial program accreditation through the quality assurance measures, cluster evaluations, and the institutional programs as well. And of course, the research work and the talent support of particular institutions. So we started to tailor our process to the maturity of the individual institutions. And so the institutional accreditation as a first toward much more mature approach, and that's the audit. So what are the strategy principles? So what an accreditation committee task is. And it has been going for 2 decades in Hungary. So the Hungarian Accreditation Committee celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. So there's 2 decades at least that, so someone who controls the higher education institutions. Control is not the task, what we use in quality assurance. All responsibility is in just holding a mirror where an institution, even a doctoral school, can see how do they meet the prerequisites getting to the excellence. We always want to define excellence. It's very difficult. We just have to assess it. And so an accreditation committee can work as a driver for quality culture. And the primary responsibility in QA is the institution. So there are new criteria to consider different learning paths and methods, independent learning, electronically accessible teaching materials, various modes of delivery, student participation, etc. So there are general aspects, and I would like to draw your attention to that there is a change in the institutional form and organization as well in Hungary, so that we have the universities, the so-called science universities, very few colleges that are basically in a different field, and the so-called universities of applied sciences. These are basically the previous teacher education colleges, and they have a new challenge in quality assurance, what we do want to see in this process when we are going to tailor our approaches to promote the institutional profile, the successful accreditation, how we can support and to serve the quality of and the quality assurance of higher education, which is exclusively the responsibility of the Higher Education Institute, and it's related to and associated with autonomy of the higher education institution. So the site visits, which are very important and were not done up to now, so the raised sensitivity toward social inclusion, as I mentioned, and teaching for students with special needs. This is very important, and then we will look at the doctoral schools as well. The increased invitation of foreign experts in evaluations on purposes or for quality assurance purposes. And for this is very important, so the language we use now, and that's English. So the how to get internationalized, how to get toward mobility, so to all the challenges we face in the European Union, so collaboration, so to work together, to share our experiences, to go toward a higher level competence, especially in doctoral schools. In doctoral schools, what we have tasked, that's the doctoral school accreditation and monitoring, so from initial accreditation up to the ex ante and ex post assessment. And so up to now, so the HAC was focusing on the core stuff only, so the scientific qualification, student focus, publication activity, international recognition, etc. And we also monitor the student progress in terms of publication, mobility, quality, and time spent on getting to the thesis. Studies without thesis, how it can be combined, included. So the inclusion issue is very important. So the higher doctoral school is a part of international network, especially on the European level, and the international links in the European higher education area. And from the point of view of doctoral schools, it's not only the higher education area is very important, but the European research area. And from this point of view is very important the efficiency of the doctoral school, how many students are enrolled, how many students do get their PhD, and how much time do they spend on what kind of support they do have, and especially different kind of cooperations. So now, we would like to follow with the evaluation of the core teaching staff, but not on the way, as we did up to now. So the training programs, the support of individual learning, research work, publications, conference presentations, new rating procedures to promote synergy between the European higher education area and the European research area, and evaluation in English. So that I can't say enough times that how important English is in science, in research. So how can we collaborate if we do not master this language? So the new doctoral school quality accreditation in preparation. So this we are working on to have much more clear accreditation criteria. So the initial accreditation with site visit. So up to now, the QA agencies, they worked, we were working with papers all the time. So the documents and looking at the different publications, how many publications in the last 5 years, etc. So it's not the way how a doctoral school accreditation should be. And the full accreditation sort of for 5 years with site visits, so asking students getting there to courses, and so to have everything so that what the quality is there. It's not just a paper, so not just a digital surface. And so we plan, so with this, with new accreditation and midterm monitoring with site visits, so you promise everything for 5 years, so there are many doctoral schools, and so they do something, so there's some administrative changes, but not too much happened up to now in several doctoral schools what concerns quality assurance. So we plan to have a clustered evaluation for QA, so and especially with a focus on the international frames and mobility. The National Doctoral Committee has a new role, new task, new legislative status. So the Higher Education Accreditation Committee and the National Doctoral Council will work together with the Hungarian Rectors Conference to share the task and to go for specialization for relevant non-QA activities for the NDC and the QA for the HAG. So the challenge is, yes, we have a challenge, and it takes a long time. And this is the QA culture. And the QA culture is very, very difficult to describe, to define. We just have to work on, and so that when we switch to the site visits, so we do not need too much explanation to know what quality is, what excellence is, how talent is supported, how social inclusion is taken, hopefully, seriously. So we have, of course, our own task and to increase the independence, quality, and or transparency, while many E's, that's the European Quality Assurance Association, ENCA, the Quality Assurance Register, ECHA, and the European Higher Education Area, EAGA. So we are working together, so we have now better functioning international staff at our secretary. So this is the new way to support the quality and the quality assurance of the doctoral schools. And it's very, very important in our doctoral schools, but it has a special meaning in doctoral schools, in education, pedagogy, to have teacher education, what is enormously important issue. So in the introduction, it was mentioned that I'm responsible for the Hungarian national curriculum redesign. So we would like to have an implemented and not just an intended curriculum. And this wouldn't be successful without better trained teachers. And as in many countries, a national curriculum should have an impact on the content of teacher education, and for this, the activity of doctoral schools and this doctoral school especially, and your collaboration with colleagues, and especially with the Norwegians who have a wonderful quality assurance agency, NOKUT. So we learn a lot of them, and we are working in collaboration. So even in QA, collaboration is very important, and in practice, in schools and in teacher education is much more important. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you much. Thank you.